Would you stand as you're able and join me in the call to worship that is printed in your worship guide? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for your God is with you wherever you go. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable. If there is any excellent and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. To you we come to offer our gratitude for this life and our life beyond this life. We pray that in these moments of worship, we may open our minds and hearts to experience the love and care that you have for each of us. May your peace that brings wholeness and healing to our living Surround each of us in our remembering and in our grieving of our beloved Mita. God of our living, God of our dying, comfort us now with your generosity of love and grace as we worship this hour. Amen. You may be seated.
On the occasion of her 109th birthday, we have come together to honor and give thanks for an extraordinary gift, the life of Mita Pearl Phillips Monteleon. As I reflect on her life, I am reminded of the words of Jesus, who said, "Whoever would be great among you must be your servant." Mita was a celebrity. If you don't believe that, just Google her, if you don't believe me. But in a time where people are famous for being famous, she was renowned not because she set her sights on celebrity status, but because very early in her life, she set a course for herself as a servant. Today we'll hear about and reflect on Mita's service to this country in the Army Nurse Corps during World War II. But her service did not stop there. She continued in this vocation of compassion for more than 50 years, serving people in their most vulnerable times. Nursing was not her only vocation. She also worked to establish and sustain a family, a community that we create to support one another and rear children. She served her family as wife and mother, the latter of which I am told is a lifelong endeavor. Later in this life, this church would be blessed by her presence and service amongst us and would proudly come to claim her as our oldest living member. Even when she was receiving care from nurses and aides at the VA, Mita was still living a life of service as a gracious patient, mentor, and wise elder, beloved by the staff of the Carl Benson VA Medical Center. I was struck by what one of the nurses said on the occasion of Mita's 108th birthday celebration last year. She said that Mita had offered her some advice that had come to sustain her in her own work as a nurse, and that was this: learn to labor and to wait. While some aspire to lives of leisure, Mita's life challenged us to find fulfillment in offering the world a lifelong labor of love, and demonstrates the words of the prophet Isaiah, that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. For Mita Monteleon's life, her service, her example of patience and resilience, we give thanks and we worship. Please join me now in our litany of praise. For the gift of memory and the beautiful memories we celebrate on this day. For our creation and all the amazing faculties of mind and spirit that make us human. For all those who have gone this way before us and who, through much love and sacrifice, have bequeathed to us a great spiritual heritage. For wisdom and courage to confront death in all its shadow and mystery. For the faith that life is ever Lord of death and love can never lose its own. We praise you, O God.
Good morning, everyone. It's certainly an honor and a privilege. First of all, I want to say thank you, of course, to the family for not only accepting us as part of the family, but also thank you to the family for entrusting us in an opportunity to serve one of our most prized veterans. we like to think that all of our veterans are VIPs, and we treat them as such as they come into the medical center. However, once in a while, you come across someone who elevates to VIP status all on their own, and who is larger than life, and who really makes their presence known, and certainly that was Miss Mita. I'll tell you, I asked for some pearls of wisdom and others from some of the staff members, and so really, really great that the way that we viewed Miss Mita, right? And just the impact that she made on the staff at the VA. She was up in the morning, fully dressed, pearls, makeup, every day. She was ready to go, and she was just very, very classy. And so it was really, really a tremendous honor for our other veterans to see, and certainly for the staff to know as well. And they loved and adored her. They just what she stood for as an individual, and the way she treated others, which was really, really a tremendous example for us of humanity. We did have the opportunity to dedicate a rose bush to our female veterans, and to which we also made sure that we gave the bundles of flowers. And so the first thing Miss Mita said was, "Oh, how beautiful." And she really, really appreciated the flowers and just the beauty around her, and was really, really heartfelt from her, and certainly to her staff. The way she connected with nurses was really amazing. Understanding, of course, where she comes from, but just her ability to connect with people. And connecting with nurses was one part of it, but connecting with housekeeping staff and connecting with CNAs and connecting with others, she really had this ability to just connect with people. And that was really, really tremendous. We did have the honor and privilege of honoring her during Nurses Week, right? So really a tremendous opportunity for us to honor her as one of our longest living as well. And I tell you, one thing that really stuck out the greatest is when I hear that she cared just as much for the staff caring for her as the staff cared about her. And so really, really a tremendous opportunity for us. The more the staff learned, because we had staff that rotated out and other things, and who's this person, right? And so the more they learned about her and learned about her story, and learned about who she was as a person, the more they loved her, and the more she elevated to celebrity status, as was already mentioned. She was a part of the Carl Vinson VA, and so we certainly were honored and privileged to have her in our care. The term that comes to mind was grace under fire, and really just the way she carried herself as a person. We had the privilege and the honor of caring for her during COVID. COVID was a thing that turned our entire world upside down. And our charge at the VA was to keep our most vulnerable patients safe. And so we did that through a number of different ways. But it's always helpful when the people we're caring for are caring for us just the same way. And so we all endured that together. And so made it through. But I tell you, lastly, just want to say that we're so very thankful to have had the privilege and the honor to care for Miss Mita, but most importantly, thankful that we've had the privilege and the honor for her to care for us as well. So thank you so much.
We reflect on these passages from our sacred scripture. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Makes me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, restores my soul, leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod, your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. From the gospel, when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? He said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself.
I hadn't planned to start out this way, but I want to tell you just a brief little anecdote that reflected how the old soldiers in wheelchairs, and I say that with the greatest possible love and affection, felt about my mother. The day before she died, I was in her room and with my back to the door was open. And she, at that point, was not communicative. She had been up until a couple of days before that. But she wasn't at that point, and I was just sitting there, and I felt a presence behind me. And I turned around, and there was an old soldier in a wheelchair in the hall. So I went out, and he reached up and hugged me, and I hugged back as hard as I could. And he said, I went in her room yesterday, and I don't know if she could hear me, but I told her what a privilege it had been for me to live in the same place where she lived. I will never forget that as long as I live. So, yesterday when I asked my college roommate, Tony, Honey, who is here, and Audra and I are staying with her, to give me just some thought about Mita. This is what she said. Some people defy logic, imagination, and age. Mita was one of those people. Tony doesn't know I'm going to say this, but so is Tony. For 18 months, while my mother was in an assisted living in Smithfield, Tony went to Smithfield and took my mother out to lunch. The same day of the month, every month. That was the most consistent attention my mother got during that time. And they formed a bond of confiding each other. I haven't asked what was said, but it was very special, and I thank you for that, Tony. What I'm going to focus on today is Mita's legacy, and several others have referred to that, and I really appreciated that. And I'll start out with her history in the military. Well, I'll start out with her birth, August the 4th, 1914, on a farm in Wade County. She graduated valedictorian of her graduating class after having skipped a year, and they only had 11 years in school then, so after 10 years she graduated. And of Wakeland School in Zebulon, North Carolina. Mr. Moser, whom I heard about throughout her entire life, was the principal and her English teacher, and he made her believe that she could be anything and do anything that she wanted, and she wanted to be a lawyer. However, it was the Depression. And so Mita worked as a farmhand in the fields of her parents' farm for 3 years. I don't think she ever really got over that. It was formative in her life, in developing a determination that was not optional. She escaped, shall we say, to Rex Nursing School after 3 years because basically it was free. Years later, after working on the staff there, she went to Fort McClellan, Alabama, where she spent probably the happiest and most fun period of her life. She had gone in a few years from working in the fields to being an officer in the military, having money to spend, shopping for silk nightgowns in the big stores in Birmingham. And they had, because the war had not been declared by the United States yet, it was in Europe, it was considered the preparatory period, and a nurse could not be in the Army at that time. So she went as a member of the Red Cross, which meant she was an officer, and she had position. But more importantly than that, she had access to the Officers Club, and she never missed an opportunity. One of the pictures in the wonderful composite that Jerry Graham has put together is of Mita in a nightgown. Excuse me, a ball gown. Freudian slip. Mita in a blue ball gown, and you wouldn't know unless I told you that that was a military picture. She was dressed to go to a big party at the Officers Club, which she did twice a week for a year. Can you imagine that change in lifestyle and quality of life and fun? However, they kicked her out after a year because you could only do the Red Cross thing for 1 year. So she went back to Rex to work for a while, and they didn't give her any recognition for what she had done. They didn't give her a raise, they didn't give her a promotion, so she said, I'm going to Yale. And she did. She went to Yale and did 6 months of postgraduate work in operating room management. While she was at Yale, the picture that is on the cover of your order of worship was taken. That is my favorite picture ever taken of my mother. She was reaching out, taking a negative and making it a euphoric experience, not just a positive. The woman went to Yale, for heaven's sake. Who else in her family had done that up to that point? I love that picture. I love her shoes she has on Spectators. Did you guys notice that? Okay, so while she was there, Pearl Harbor was declared, and she was invited to come back, and she did, and she went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and she was there for 2 years. When she came to my house to live 12 years ago, I thought I had heard all of her stories because Mita is a great storyteller. But when you sit across the table 3 meals a day from somebody for 8 years, things just come out unintentionally. And one day at lunch, she was blah, 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 and my patients were German POWs, blah, blah, blah. And I said, what? And it turns out, of course I did the research, that by the end of World War II, there were German prisoners of war in 46 states in the United States. And the story that she tells that makes everybody the same in some degree of humanity is one day she went to her office, and there was a German in there who could speak English, and he was in tears when he told her that he had not had any communications from his family, and he had been promised that they would be able to get that. And then he said, but I'm sure it would be the same if the situation were reversed. So he was sad but understanding. And Mother's takeaway from that in that entire 2 years that she was there is that he wasn't a war person, she wasn't a war person. He was doing what he was supposed to do, she was doing what she was supposed to do, and so they just did it together. When my mother got out of the Army, she went to New York with my father and lived there for 10 years. He was not Baptist. He wasn't raised on a farm. He was Italian, and they lived in Brooklyn. This is just another example of how my mother just did things. Somebody I was talking to just recently asked me, what made her go and join the Army? Well, I never thought about that. She did it because it was there and Mita was Mita. That's just what she did. The same with going to New York. Backing up, I'll tell you a story. Well, first of all, let me tell you that I'm working up to talking about her legacy. And the two things that I got from her that I'm the most grateful for are resilience and sense of humor. I can laugh and make you laugh in the middle of a nervous breakdown. And I've done that many times. But when she was in the military, one night she had night duty. And she apparently had a serious distaste for night duty when it made her miss parties. And so she was sitting with a soldier who was in traction. He had been in war and he was in traction, and he got a Dear John letter. And she read it to him, and it was a very sad situation. Okay, she went to lunch, which when you have night duty is at midnight. On the way back, she crossed over a little creek, and she saw a hoppy toad. That's a frog, y'all. She picked up that hoppy toad, and she put it in her pocket, and she went back to the ward, and she put it in the bed with that soldier who was in traction. And he started screaming and yelling, woke up everybody on the ward. Everybody was screaming and yelling. And the other staff people were telling her, Mita, you are going to get a dishonorable discharge. That's just not something you can do. But what happened was nothing. Nobody said anything to her. And when she told this story at the speech that made her famous 12 years ago at the VA in Dublin, she wound it up by saying, I guess that showed them I knew how to make somebody happy who was sad. That was Mita. Mita's legacy. Mita did not teach us. She didn't even demonstrate behavior intentionally. She didn't tell us what to do or how to think. I was raised in a house with no prejudice of any kind. I discovered this when I went to college, and there was a conversation about a girl whose last name was Weinstein, and somebody, or something like that, and somebody said, well, she's Jewish. And I said, well, how do you know? And they said, well, Weinstein. And I said, well, I had no clue about anything like that. And for that, to this day, I am so grateful. My mother also had no prejudice about, or no preconceived notion about limits on access of what we could do. My mother was a single mother. She was divorced before divorce was cool in the 1950s, and she carried the weight of that pretty heavily. But it didn't limit what we did. And here's an example. In 1956, the North Carolina State Legislature decided to and provided funding for the first state-supported art museum in the United States. And I was there at the ribbon cutting in the 5th grade. There were full-length mink coats all around us. We were in what's called cloth coats. But we were there. And her legacy is that when somebody allows you to be in an environment, it gives you access to that environment for the entire rest of your life, and your children, and their children. I went back, my brother and I used to ride the bus, probably cost 5 cents, to downtown Raleigh when Mother was working, and we would go into the Capitol building and the Museum of Natural History, and it was just what we did. Why did we do that? Because it was there, and my mother had given us access by helping us be present. We were also charter members of Friends of the College at NC State, which started in 1959. They had the likes of Van Cliburn, Itzhak Perlman, the New York Ballet, the North Carolina Symphony, the Mamas and the Papas, Peter, Paul, and Mary, foreign ballet groups, every top level in their field you can imagine. And everybody went because it cost almost nothing. I was steeped in culture my whole growing up life. And it becomes part of the air you breathe when you're exposed to that. As a child, I used to go, even when after I was married and had a child and moved back to Raleigh, sometimes I would go downtown to the Museum of Art. There were times I took TIFF. There were times I went and just sat in there by myself because I had a sense of place there. It was mine. The strongest characteristic I attribute to Mita is bravery. I used to think of that as courage, but bravery is a little bit different. When she went off to the Army, she exhibited that. It's just who she was. One of the things that I didn't realize was significant when I was growing up is that my mother was constantly saying, let's get in the car and go. And we would go to the Duke Gardens, we would go to the planetarium in Chapel Hill, we would go to Grandma and Pop's house, we would go to Amelia's parents' house, we would go, get in the car and go. My mother made a wrong turn everywhere we went. I don't care how many times she had been there, she made a wrong turn. And guess how she responded to that? It's an adventure. It wasn't until I was an adult that I knew that was bad, and you were supposed to get mad when that happened. Okay, the legacy for me is this. About a month ago, I went to Racket Lake, which is in the Adirondacks, to meet a cousin of mine, an Italian cousin, and his children and grandchildren. GPS took me right there. On the way back, I made a wrong turn. And I was driving through some of the most beautiful scenery you can even imagine. I looked up and I saw a windmill. I didn't see that windmill on the way to Racket Lake. And I had driven an hour out of the way. When I saw that windmill, because of Mita, I drove up to the top of that hill, and I got out of the car and looked around, and I saw 63 windmills and cornfields that were as green and vast and beautiful as you can imagine. That trip to Racket Lake took me 3 hours. Home was 7 hours. And I was so aware of gratitude for my mother. I'll talk briefly about Mita's medical legacy, and Mr. Avila is aware of this, Mita had the ability to create her own personal resurrections. After she'd been at my house about a year, one morning I couldn't arouse her. She was 99 at the time, I think. And so I was concerned, and I would go back and ask her if she wanted to eat. When she didn't want to eat, that was really serious. And so throughout the day, it kind of stayed like that. So I called Tiff and I called Audra and I said, I don't know what's going on here. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I just want to let you know. So Aud gets in a plane from Colorado. Tiff gets in a plane from, I guess, Chapel Hill at that time. And by the time they got there the next day, Mita was sitting up in a recliner and telling stories about World War II. This happened over and over and over. When she had COVID, and I got at the VA when she was about 105 or 6, I guess, 106, I guess. I got the call that she had COVID. That is the only time that I have basically collapsed in tears, because that was early on when we were all terrified of what was going to happen. So she goes to the COVID ward, and the next day I get a call from the medical doctor. Your mother is amazing. Your mother is amazing. She's just doing so well. Every day I got that same call. Well, it kind of knocked her flat, but she resurrected and has no effect, at 106 or whatever, no effects from having had COVID. That legacy, which I know I have now, I know this, I don't think this, I know this. When I had COVID and had a massive attack of blood clots in both lungs, one in my heart and one in my leg, and lived, which you're not supposed to if you have what's called a saddle clot. It goes all the way across. And I got well, and then I got sick again, and I had this condition called CTEPH, and the only fix for it is open heart and lung surgery, which I was scheduled to have in January at Temple University in Philadelphia. I had been diagnosed with CTEPH, which means basically heart failure and your days are numbered. And I had been diagnosed by tests at Emory and Macon and in Philadelphia, different doctors and so forth. When I got to Philadelphia in January, I was going to have tests for 2 days, and the operating room was already scheduled. My tests came back that my heart had shrunk back to normal size. I had the heart function, my doctor said, of a teenager. And I could do exercise that people can't do if they qualify for this surgery. I got that from Mita. I know I did. When I asked Audra for her reflections about Mita, this is what she said. I have more of a she says curiosity. We share curiosity. I have more of a quiet curiosity, but it is very keenly there. It keeps me interested in new things all the time, and I can get really excited about new things, whatever they may be. A new study, something new I want to do. My follow-through is there sometimes and sometimes not. I think maybe being able to pick up the pieces and move forward is also what I think of about Mita. Regardless of how we do that and how much emotion some of us have around that, there is still what we used to call in the ultra running community, relentless forward motion, always moving forward. And with that type of relentlessness, it means it's not negotiable. We just are going to keep moving forward. And I feel, this is Audra speaking, after her divorce and my mother's divorce and my divorce, there was always something to move to. In Mita's case, she moved back home to Raleigh. Mom moved back to where her career she felt more secure. And in my case, I moved across the country into a whole new life. That's when she left Georgia and went to Naropa in Boulder and got her master's degree in contemplative psychotherapy, and it changed the course of her life. Legacy, in summary, I will say, is memory carried into the future. Mita was born 6 years before women could vote in America. But when she moved to Georgia at 98, one of the first things she wanted to do was register to vote. And that was Mita. When you live in the atmosphere of someone like that, their legacy becomes part of the air you breathe. Thank you, Mita.
I promise mine is going to be short. I'm Tiffany, Mita's granddaughter, and Raleigh is my home. I was born here. I'm really glad to be back here in the place that was her home for most of her life. It occurred to me when preparing to talk today that I really never knew her very well as an adult. I knew her as a little kid knows their grandmother. My family, my nuclear family, moved to Georgia when I was in the 4th grade, and after that we saw her on holidays and summer vacation. But the brief period of time that I did have her in my life until I was like 8 or 9 years old was really golden. She was unique. She did all the things that I wanted her to do. She let me sleep in her bed with her, which I just thought was the bee's knees. Mom talked about getting in the car and going. We took road trips. Usually it was to Aunt Elva's and Uncle James's house in Virginia. And after having been a passenger in her car much later as an adult, I'm not really sure how safe I was on those trips, but we always made it home, and we had a great time together. She loved to play games, and we played lots of games together. We played cards, we played Scrabble. I remember one time we even played fencing with yardsticks. And, looking back on that, I just have to ask myself, who plays fencing in a wig and a muumuu with their granddaughter with yardsticks? She was an original. That was just what she did. She invented games if there wasn't one readily available. The fencing was a one-off, by the way, because I believe she actually broke my stick. And I thought, well, this isn't a very fun game if she's going to win. But I was definitely a girly girl, and Grandma totally indulged that. She sewed dresses for me, as many grandmothers did in those days. And I even once somehow conned her into buying me a pair of heels, which my mother in her wisdom had declined to do on the basis that heels were not appropriate for a 5-year-old. Well, with a little aiding and abetting from Grandma, I scored my first pair of heels, which I'm sure were just black patent leather Mary Janes with a 1/2-inch heel on them or something, but I was mighty proud to have grown-up lady shoes. I know now, of course, that Mita had her fair share of life challenges, and Mom talked about that a lot. I remember asking her at some point, definitely before, in that period when I was probably 6 or 7, why didn't I have a Grampy at her house? And she said that she couldn't live with my Grampy anymore because he would leave her all alone for days or weeks and not tell her where he was. I don't think we ever talked about him again, but I certainly never forgot that brief conversation. Thinking about it now, I realize that I never felt pity for her, though. I always had the sense, even then, that she decided that she wasn't going to stay with someone who didn't respect her. I imagine that at that time, in the 50s or 40s or whatever it was, with 2 young children, that had to be really hard to do. It would be hard to do for any woman today. I'm sure there's a lot more to that story than I will ever know, but I really admire her sense of her own dignity. I don't know exactly what her legacy is just yet, but I do know that I love taking road trips. I love playing Scrabble. I love wearing heels. And I love being very happily married to a man that I love and respect, who loves and respects me. Thank you, Mita, for being a super cool grandmother.
American author Seth Godin wrote, "How dare you settle for less when the world has made it so easy for you to be remarkable?" I don't know about how easy the world has made it for anyone to be remarkable, but what I do know is that Mita Monteleon dared not settle for less in her life. She was a remarkable person. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "The purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experiences." It is no wonder that I think of Mita when I read those words. I had the honor and privilege of knowing Mita Monteleon. As her pastor when she lived here in Raleigh, I often visited with Mita. And I would often begin our visits by asking Mita, how was she doing? Rarely, if ever, was there a complaint. She would oblige my perfunctory greeting, but she did not allow the conversation to rest there. No, Mita most often had something more important on her mind than how she was doing. Her interest was often in something she had read or was reading, whether in the paper or in a book. She wanted to engage in intellectual and meaningful conversation, not just idle talk. Her observations, her thoughts, her insights, her wisdom, her intellectual curiosity intrigued me and always left our visits with something new to ponder. Yes, Mita Monteleon was a remarkable person, and from my very first visit with her, I knew that she was a remarkable person. So allow me just a brief moment to reflect on what I think made Mita such a remarkable person. One might say that what made Mita such a remarkable person is that she lived 108 years, less than 3 months shy of her 109th birthday, which would have been today. To live to be 108 years old is remarkable by any standard. It is a testament to her will, her strength, her determination, her resilience, and the care she gave to good health. But is living to the age of 108 what made Mita such a remarkable person? One might also say that what made Mita such a remarkable person was that she served her country in the U.S. Army Nurse Corps as a second lieutenant during World War II. And at the time of her death, she was the oldest living World War II nurse. Anyone who serves our country, defending our freedoms, is, in my opinion, a remarkable person. But is that what made Mita such a remarkable person? Mita lived through 2 pandemics, something no one else in this room can say. The Spanish flu of 1918 and COVID-19. In her lifetime, she saw the invention of the television, lived through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, the discovery of penicillin and bubble gum. The pace of change during the 20th century and the first 23 years of the 21st century is absolutely mind-boggling. It takes a remarkable person to not only live through all of those changes, but to adapt to them and to be inquisitive about them. Mita didn't just let all of those changes pass her by. No, eagerly and without fear, she engaged in them daily. But is that what made Mita such a remarkable person? Maybe one could consider the 50 years she worked as a nurse following her discharge from the Army in 1944 as that which made her such a remarkable person. Nursing, as we all know, is not for the faint of heart. It takes a special person to be a nurse, to care for another's most basic physical needs with grace and compassion. That Mita chose nursing as her vocation in life could very well qualify her as a remarkable person. But is that what made Mita such a remarkable person? I guess one could pick any one aspect or dimension of Mita's life and argue that that one aspect is what made her life so remarkable. But I would argue that it is not the individual parts of her life that made her such a remarkable person. I would argue that it was the whole of her life that made her such a remarkable person. It was that she had purpose in life, and that purpose was to live the one life she had been given, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear all her life for newer and richer experiences. What made Mita Monteleon remarkable was that she believed in living life abundantly, with her mind and with her heart and soul and strength, her whole being, and then to love her neighbor as herself. And for Mita, neighbor wasn't confined to who lived next door. That's why she served her country as an Army Corps nurse. It is why she continued nursing for another 50 years. It is why she laughed often and always wore pearls. It is why she appreciated the beauty in people and the beauty in this world and the art of this world. It is why she remained intellectually curious throughout her entire life, and why she won the respect of intelligent people. And it is why she found the best in others and each of us. What made Mita Monteleon such a remarkable person is that she lived her life to the fullest, counting every single day of her 108 years as a gift, as a blessing, as a life to be explored. She took not one thing for granted. Whether it was playing Scrabble, serving in the Army or at the Red Cross, changing a bedpan, or engaging in her intellectual pursuits, Mita chose to live the one life that her Creator gave her to its fullest, for herself, for her family, for her fellow beings, and for this country. That made Mita a remarkable person. And so may we have the courage and the resilience to follow her example. And may she now rest from all her labors. Amen. now process behind the family to the garden.